Democrats think of America as the government. They don't think of it as the American people or the values embodied by the American people or the founding values, which they don't like anyway. Democrats believe that the founding values merely enshrine racism, sexism, bigotry, and homophobia, that all of the Constitution, all of the Declaration of Independence was written as a way to enshrine property ownership by rich white men. This is the Howard Zinn view of history, and unfortunately, it's permeated large segments of the Democratic Party. It's a real problem for Democrats. It really is, because most Americans generally, despite this poll, most Americans still kind of like the country. And when you have this Howard Zinn view of history, that George Washington was just a rich white slave owner who had no principles, and that he wasn't risking anything in the Revolutionary War, all these guys just wanted to keep their own property. When you believe that, you throw out American history. When you treat American history as just a series of power relations, what you're really doing is undermining what America is and what makes America good. The reality is that America is the only country in human history founded on an ideal, a stated ideal, and a good ideal. The idea that all men are created equal, granted inalienable rights by their creator. That is a unique proposition in human history. And the founding fathers may not have perfectly realized the manifestation of that idea, right? Slavery still existed, obviously. Many of the same people who signed the Declaration of Independence, the guy who wrote the Declaration of Independence was a slaveholder. But it doesn't mean that the ideal that they were promoting wasn't a good ideal. It was a great ideal. It is a great ideal. And that's why I've always objected to the folks who kneel during the national anthem. I've always objected to this idea that you have to burn the flag in order to protest. It seems to me that what you really should be doing is saying, I love the flag, and that's why I think that we're not standing up in proper ways for it. I love the national anthem. I love the country, and that's why I think that we have to fulfill that dream. This is what Frederick Douglass did so well. He did a very famous speech during the late days of slavery, before the Civil War. He did a speech, very famous 4th of July speech, in which he said, the Declaration of Independence is a magnificent document, but it doesn't protect people like me. It should protect people like me. It should be universal. Let's look at the universal implications of the ideas pushed by Thomas Jefferson, and then let's go out and act upon them. Right? That's the way that people ought to question whether we're living up to our own ideals. But the ideals themselves are good. And this Marxist idea that all politics, all principle is really just a manifestation of what you want. It's all just power relationships. That the only reason that the Constitution exists is because there are a bunch of people who want to preserve their own interests. It's just not correct. It's just not correct. It was a lot riskier for the founders to fight against the greatest empire on earth than it was for them. Much riskier for them to fight that empire and put all their property at risk. I mean, the Declaration of Independence pledges their lives, their wealth, and their sacred honor, their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to the fight. There were founders who went legitimately broke in the course of the Revolutionary War, Robert Livingston among them, from New York. He watched his house burn to the ground. George Washington, there's a story my business partner Jeremy Boring was telling me last night. George Washington, the British were threatening Mount Vernon, and apparently one of his staffers basically went out and begged the British not to burn down Mount Vernon. When Washington found out about it, he was angry. He said, listen, I pledged my life, my fortune, my sacred honor to fight this battle. To pretend that the heroes of America's past are not actually heroes is deeply embedded in a lot of Democratic ideology right now, and it's really bad.